Hey, what's going on? It's Rio. Welcome, everybody. This is episode number 32 of the podcast. I'm joined by my amazing co hosts, Crimson Shadow and Zyfox.
Going on, guys?
So, guys,
All right, so first and foremost, we have to address the change in the cast. I know the last episode was almost 2 months ago in May, and I've been reading a lot what you guys have been saying, like, yo, what's good with the episodes every week? Why are we waiting so long between episodes? There's been major change, and as all of you listening should know that M2 Dave, Tom Brady, and I have split and went our own ways. Don't get it twisted, this is not a bad thing at all. There's no bad blood between us. I've talked this through with them many weeks ago in a call where I told them, hey, we've been doing podcasts together for almost 8 years, and I've never enjoyed the direction that we went with them. Like, if any of you go back and listen to the couple episodes we did talking about MK9 or Injustice 1 podcast, the MKX episodes, Injustice 2, whatever it was, it's always been us all complaining, saying that, well, MK9 is a bad game because XYZ is broken. This is breaking the rules of the game. The balance, NRS needs to yada yada to fix this, do this and that for the next NRS game, yada yada. It's been the same song and dance for almost a decade, and it just hit me. I don't want to just talk about the same dilemmas every single NRS game. Here's the truth. I don't really care if the games are super broken, or if they're really unfair, or if it's a zoning fest or rushdown city. What I care to discuss are how do the games play? What makes X, Y, or Z character good or bad? How can you learn how to do this or do that? Let's have a discussion on how this mechanic works, or how this strategy can be applied in all these different ways. What makes some players better than others in Mortal Kombat? You see, I don't want to be stuck being a broken record for the next NRS game coming out, whether it's Injustice 3, MK12, or whatever. What I'm saying is the podcast was never supposed to be what it became. It just happened. So a split in direction was unavoidable. In a way, this is a good thing because now there's more podcasts for everyone to listen to. And in the end, we all kind of win. My goal was to have a podcast to focus on good discussion, diving deep into either characters or mechanics, talking about all different Mortal Kombat and NRS games, just getting into the real good juicy stuff and topics. I want people listening to sometimes go like, damn, these people sound like they really know some shit about Mortal Kombat games. I didn't know this character could do this or that, or that a mechanic can be used in this way or whatever. So at the end of the day, I want people listening to be entertained, maybe learn some things, have interesting conversations to look forward to, or learn how to evolve as a player with advice. Because believe it or not, we're just like all of you out there that play the hell out of these Mortal Kombat games, and we love to talk about the game and share our knowledge. Now, Crimson, from what I heard you tell me, because I didn't listen to what they said on their podcast, you told me that they didn't say any of what I just explained, that nothing was actually clarified. Apparently, it's being portrayed as I left the podcast to pursue my own endeavors. I left. I didn't leave anything. I made it very clear to both of them when I set up the group call that we were in weeks ago. You know, the one that we talked in for like 4 to 5 hours, Crimson, that one. What I said was that I did not like the stigma that the podcast has been through, and that we have completely different directions in what we want to pursue. I told them, look, we're adults here. The best thing we should do is Tom will run his own podcast with Dave, and I will continue to run this podcast here on this channel. I never said I was leaving any podcast, or that I was finished or done doing these podcasts. That's completely false and extremely misleading to not clarify that. And to be blunt, this idea has been going on for months and months. You guys have no clue. Crimson Zyfox, you guys know this firsthand because you've both been there for the discussions, debates, and drama after a podcast is done being recorded. Us splitting to do our own things had absolutely nothing to do with the news regarding MK11. This idea has been brewing for countless months. I didn't quit MK11 or anything. That's all lies too. Here's the thing I don't get. If you're going to announce to everybody about what happened, then at least tell the truth, tell the full story, and don't leave out the most important details that everyone needs to know. Because now we have this situation where people are saying I rage quit the podcast and quit doing them along with quitting MK11 because MK11 is done being supported. It's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. And it seems like so many people are so focused on going on a witch hunt to try and cancel somebody so badly that not one single person decided to stop for a minute to ask for the truth and hear both sides of the story to what actually happened. It's deja vu. It's like I've been in this spot so many times before. And this is one of the reasons why I'm tired of running a mindless drama show for years. Because it never goes well. There's always some twist or turn and things being wrongfully explained to make people look a certain way. I'm just over this whole ordeal. Like, the charades behind everything. What I think, it seems like people don't give a crap about helping build a community to play video games you enjoy. People care about being right about things that don't matter. They care about being about the drama, the blow-ups. Gotta take it so far to the point where you need to make the other person look bad, be a villain. Oh yeah, it's his fault, this and all him. You kind of get what I'm getting at though, Crimson? Like, something like this, because it's been pretty touchy, people know the backstory to the podcast. You know, there's arguing, it always gets very heated. When something like this occurs, you're going to have to explain yourself and go into detail as to what actually happened. You can't just be like, oh yeah, you know, Rio left to go do his own thing. He doesn't want to be involved. He wants to make character guides. Like, that was not at all what was discussed in those long group calls that we had talking about this. It's almost as if like they fell on deaf ears, and in a way we kind of wasted our time having those to talk about those issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it was intentional, but I do think that is what it ended up being. Like, that's what it ended up coming across as, is that like, hey, this is the same podcast. It's on another channel now, and it's just without Rio. So I think it's good that we're talking about it now, so we can make it clear that it's actually not the same podcast. That the goal is for people to go their separate ways, so that it could be a smoother experience for everyone. People could really talk about what they really want to talk about and not have to have like crazy friction or the same topic every week. So ultimately, I think everyone should be happy about it, at least between all of us, because it allows people to just breathe a little bit more and really get to the topics that they want to get to without having to, you know, talk about like Shiva or Shao Kahn or Sechion for the 39th episode.
Or Sub-Zero.
Yeah, or Sub-Zero or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, if there's anything I want to say, it's just to clear that up, is that it really is becoming two separate shows. But hopefully in the long run, that'll be better for everybody.
Yeah, but this is the thing. See, people, or like the messages I've been getting lately on my YouTube channels, and when I streamed on Friday, some of the comments I'm like, what are people talking about? Why are they saying this to me? Why are they saying, Rio, you're this for, you know, bitching out against Tom and Dave and leaving? I'm like, what are you guys talking about? This never happened. And this is why I find it very disrespectful that, you know, Dave and Tom couldn't take the time to explain exactly what happened, to make sure, you know, people wouldn't take it the wrong, be like, oh wow, Rio did this. Because what I told Dave specifically was like, hey Dave, don't say anything about this on your podcast because it wouldn't make any sense. You guys are doing your own podcast. It's a new one. It's part of the Brady podcast. The Brady podcast on that channel. I've never been on the Brady podcast or on a podcast in general on that channel. So to say that I left anything there would not make any sense. What I told Dave was, wait until I do the next episode. I will address everything. I will explain everything very clearly so that nobody gets the wrong feelings or people don't get misled into believing something they didn't. That's what I told Dave. But of course, he didn't take my advice. He had to quickly make an episode. Got to get that drama. Got to get this and that. That's what I find very very bad to do, in my opinion, to not make it clear and clarify things. Like, you have to explain what happened, what the goals were. The fact that it wasn't said that we agreed to split ways and do our own different podcasts, to me, it's very upsetting.
Well, I mean, again, I don't think it was intentional, but the way it came out, it's just good to come out and clarify what's going on. And I think it probably shouldn't surprise anyone because I think a lot of people saw this coming. And it's probably good to say too that like it's not like everyone decided, okay, we're not gonna be friends anymore, we're never gonna talk anymore, like I hate these guys, whatever, you know? But it's just was for the best of everyone to go our separate ways. And it's something that, you know, has kind of been kicked around for like a few months now. And some people have commented that they thought it was gonna happen or whatever. And so I think it although it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, I think hopefully it'll make things smoother from here on out. But again, it's really important to reiterate, right? This is not a beef, it's not a war, right? It's not like a drama or one channel versus the other or one person running over here against these other people. It's just trying to make things more flexible so that everyone can really talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah, there's no ill will or anything. I'm just trying to fix some of the damage that was done. But to clarify, like, the thing is, a lot of people that are new to the podcast, because with MK11 a year ago, I started a separate channel to focus only on podcasts. That way, everything would be organized with episodes. The thing is, this podcast has been going for a long time, like I mentioned earlier. It's not just a 1.5 year podcast. This podcast has been going on since the beginning of Injustice 1. So it's almost like a decade old. The thing is, all of the old episodes, all through the one or two that we did on MK9, all the ones that we did for Injustice, MKX, Injustice 2, etc., they're all scattered around my main YouTube channel and some other channels, so they're very hard to find, but this has been an ongoing thing. Like, if you go back and listen to Injustice 1, where it's like, oh my, we need to nerf this character, do this, MKX, well, this game isn't good, the meta's bad, you know, it's just always been focused on the same issues that comprise like what the podcast has always been about, and it's been things I've never gelled with. I've never wanted to be like, I don't want to be that person that's all about nerf this character, this should be nerfed, this is broken, this is unfair. Like, you know, I've always been more of the player that wants to discuss strategies and talk about how we can beat things. How does this game play? You know, I want to be someone that spreads knowledge rather than talking about everything that needs to be changed to turn the game into something it was never supposed to be. Because like, if you change MK9 and Just One, whatever games it is, at a whole foundation level, they're not going to be the same games anymore. You know, what is MK9 with characters not like Cabal and Sark's top tier? Then you would be playing this weird different game that's not MK9. Same can be said for all these different games. They all have their own charm, they all have their own pros and cons. But to always focus on one side of the thing for 10 years, it's just something that I've never aligned with correctly. And like I said, there's no bad feelings. It's good now because now everyone gets to listen to their own podcast, and you all have like your different things that draw you into them, right? Like, if you guys want to listen to why NRS games aren't, I don't know, like worthy to play, or why they have all these issues, then there's like a million places you guys are able to go to find that. But if you want to listen to, you know, how this character works, like very deep details, how this game, the meta is, how this character functions, how to, like, you know, all the details that are very hard to come across, I feel like, with NRS games, because a lot of people don't get into the very specific details when it comes to them. And I see a lot of times people going like, yo, you know, where do we find out how to play this game? Why are there no gods in MK9? How does this work in MK11? There's no videos on this, you know. So this podcast, going forward at least, for MK12 and Justice 3, whatever the next project is going to be covering a lot of stuff. And a lot of these things, I think, are going to be hard to come across on other places, because it's just the nature that, let's be serious here, a lot of people just don't dive deep into games like that. Like, you have to really be in tune with the game to go into the details to maximize, you know, the specifics, things that show when you put like years of experience into a game. But yeah, that's just like, what's your thoughts on all this, Zyfox?
Well, I'm just now getting caught up to all the comments on that particular video. I didn't get to listen to it yet. I'm just seeing a lot of confirmation bias is what I'm getting. A lot of people had this idea about you that they're just all of a sudden they're coming out with it now that supposedly you dropped off the face of the earth because the game is no longer supported. I don't understand what was said in this podcast because I didn't listen to it, that would make people think that you just said, you know what, since I was supposedly you were wrong about everything, that all of a sudden you're just going to disappear. That was very convenient, and I feel like that's the work of M2 Dave, but that's neither here nor there. This is actually kind of ridiculous. A lot of people are actually just being crazy. Like, Rio is such a shill, LOL. Like, what is going? Like, what was said in this podcast,
Dude?
Now I have.
You know what's funny? It's leaked onto my previous videos on my YouTube channel of people coming to attack me, saying, "Yeah, you know, you shouldn't be part of this community. This and that. You're the reason why games are this and that." Like, I don't understand where this is all coming from. It's like people are kind of comparing me to, like, I need to be canceled. I need to be banished from the community. I still don't understand what I did. I didn't leave or abandon anybody or quit doing MK podcast, or I literally streamed MK11 a few days ago on Saturday at midnight. That's the last time I streamed, a few days ago. How did I quit the game through that announcement if I was streaming it a few days ago? Nothing makes sense, you know?
I think the thing people forget is that this community used to be fun. You know, like, the reason why I wanted to join in the first place is because there is so much hype around what was going on. There was hype around even though our game was our game was ridiculously broken. Right? MK9, I don't think anyone will argue that. But there was so much happening with like the gameplay in the tournaments, even when we had no money, even when no one sponsored, even when nobody was, okay, a couple like you and CD Junior were like some of the only people who had a sponsor through the lifetime of that game. And even when there was like no external support, it was just fun. Like, people were proud of their scenes. People were doing hype stuff in tournament. People were really interested to see what was going to happen when certain players played each other. And I feel like we've been getting a little bit away from that in favor of like super small, petty like Twitter drama and stuff like that these last couple of years. You know, there's always some huge beef or a split or a fight, but it's never really over the gameplay. It's always over some personal stuff. And so I think it would be good to get back to just enjoying ourselves. You know, not that we can't poke fun and sometimes rib each other and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, hopefully we're all here because we enjoy fighting games and we enjoy the community. So, hopefully we can kind of start to bring that spirit back.
Right, and you learn through experience, which is why when the next NRS game comes out, I want to make sure that there's a new direction and I'm going forward with something that I think will be better. But when I look back at all those older episodes or during those time frames like MK9 Justice 1, to me it was missed opportunity to really talk about games, discuss things that really made them work, instead of, talking about, well, this needs to be changed for next generation game, this is why this game's not good, this character's broke, like, I don't want to be stuck being a broken record, repeating the same things over and over. And also, I don't want to force my friends that don't like a game that they don't care to talk about it. Like, for example, M2 Davis told me many times, he does not care about MK11. He does not wish to discuss it. He will not talk about it. And it's to the point where if I even mention MK11, if we're in a private call or playing another game, he'll like literally leave or tell me to stop talking about it. So when you have someone with that, kind of mindset that they don't want to talk about MK11 because of how much they do not like it, isn't it kind of weird to have a podcast with a person like that? Because there's no going forward, it's just going to be drama and opinions clashing, but not the good kind. The kind of,
the toxic kind.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, he's telling me like he wants to talk about Tekken and rant about Tekken. I'm like, Dave, I want the podcast to focus on NRS games. Like, I'm sure Tekken's a great game, but I'm not a Tekken player. I don't play Tekken. I don't follow Tekken. I don't have interest in Tekken. So to have like a 20-30 minute rant about Tekken on the podcast that's supposed to be around NRS games, to me, it's like completely off direction. That's why when I mentioned many times in our private calls that we had, like, look, why don't you guys just do your own podcast with the Brady Show? That means you guys can talk about whatever you want. Talk about Tekken, talk about Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, like whatever you guys want to talk about. Like, the red carpet's yours.
Let's be serious here. Most of the time they're talking about some drama anyway, so it's not like it really matters. If they're going to go out on their own Brady cast or Brady podcast, they're going to talk about the same shit that they've been talking about for the last 7 years. And that's perfectly okay.
Right. Right, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is what I mean. They can talk about whatever they want for as long as they want. This is why it's better. Because, I'm sure they don't want to hear me talk about MK11 a lot, They don't like the game, which is fine. But at the same time, I don't really want to hear about constantly Street Fighter or Tekken this developer. Like, I'm just not into that kind of discussion, That's never really drawn me. I never picked up fighting games because I was one day reading Ed Boon's Twitter and he was tweeting stuff. And I'm like, damn, let me go check out this game. It's never been like that. I've always played Mortal Kombat because I liked them. It had nothing to do with the developers, the studio. All of that stuff to me is always irrelevant when I play a game. If a game is fun, I'll play it. If it's not fun, I won't play it. It's simple as that.
I think there's way too much black and white going on here, where you're either in love with the game and you're a shill, or you're like this anti-hero, people's champ willing to speak up and take on the big wigs when you call out their game. And it's really not like that. Most people fall in the middle. They're mostly gray. People like the game. They have certain things to say about it. Some people are more positive than others. And I feel like a lot of these shill comments are unwarranted. When you call someone a shill, it's supposedly because there's some type of financial interest in you saying that the game is good, therefore you capitalize on it. And that's really a convenient way for having someone, or quote unquote, some people who do not like the game, who have been irrelevant for a long time because they don't like the game, and so that they don't play games anymore. That's a very convenient way for them to then just like, hey, like, look, this is why he's saying this game is good. I'm right, you're wrong. I feel like there's way too much bias when it comes to that. There's too many people who are like, yeah, you know what? If my view is aligned with this person and I think that they're correct, then go, by all means, go ahead and watch those people or whoever those people are. You want unfiltered truth, you're going to come to this podcast here, because we're not going to bullshit on nothing. We're going to be talking about the game. We're going to be talking about, don't get us wrong. If there is drama in the scene that we need to talk about, we're still going to talk about that. This is not like, oh, all of a sudden there's no drama, there's no M2 Dave, and there's no Tom Brady, therefore it's going to be boring. Let's get that completely straight. If I got something to say that's real talk, that Zyfox is going to come through. So just straight up right from there, that's where we're going to go from now on. Rio obviously has his opinions. Krim is going to have his opinions. And then we even mentioned who our new guest is. Are you going to say?
No, we haven't yet. That'll be for next episode. I just didn't. Okay, so we have a new co-host. I just didn't want him to be on this episode because let's be honest here. This episode is not. It's not good. It's going to be pretty crap. It's not really. No one's going to learn anything from this episode. Yeah, but this episode it has to be done because it needs to be addressed. Like, we need to move on. We need to clear what was being said and address things. But next episode, we will have a new co-host joining us, and we will go back to having guests join us every month or so. But yeah, like Zyfox was saying earlier, every MK game to ever exist, I can list you things I like about them and things I don't like about them. The thing is, I like a mix and a balance between stuff. I don't like to only talk about the negative and the bad things every single time because it gets tiring. Like, for example, if I'm talking about UMK3, do I really need to mention how broken Cabal is in UMK3 every single time? Do I really need to mention that the game is super imbalanced? Like, people won't like it if they play it because, like, the thing is, some people just don't care. They want to talk about the stuff that makes the game work. How does the game play? What does this character do? What kind of character plays? Like, like they want to know all the details. They don't want to always know about the negatives and why the game is bad and why you shouldn't play it and why Street Fighter and Tekken are the best things to ever exist. Sometimes we just want to talk about MK and the stuff that we like, which is fine. Just like sometimes we'll address things that we don't like about MK games that we don't agree with, But it's all about balance. We don't want to always be on one side of the seesaw forever, which is, like I said, the past 8 years of this podcast has been always on one side of the seesaw for eternity. And now with this split happening, there's more of a balance now because, you're going to be able to hear more talking points, more discussions, more about this mechanic, things that we haven't even addressed yet. Think about it. This MK11 has over 30 characters in the game. And throughout all the 50 episodes about MK11, we've only talked about like 8 characters. How is that possible? How does a game have almost 40 characters, almost 60 episodes, and we only talk about the same 8 characters? Like, something's obviously wrong there, right? It's not that we don't care about some of these characters. It's just that, like I said with the seesaw, we're always focused on one little spectrum that only these characters get mentioned every single time. Everything else about the game gets completely ignored. And it's not only MK11. If you guys go back and listen, it's all about with MKX. Injustice 2, Injustice 1, etc. It's always been about the same characters, always getting talked about, and this and that. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, to each their own, but some of us like to talk about the entire package of the game. We don't like to only talk about, the small amount and focus on that for eternity.
I mean, especially since the truth is, like, every game that we played in the last 8 years or so has been controversial in some way, Like, every single one of them, from MK9, Injustice, Injustice 2, MKX, right? There's always something about them that was polarizing. There were some people who liked them and some people who didn't. And despite that, we've had a lot of hype, a lot of cool moments for all those games, So there's got to be some kind of balance. Because, like, no matter what state the game is in, at the end of the day, like, our community is summed up by what's happening with us, what we put in, what's happening in tournament, what's going on. And it's never just going to be this patch or the next patch being perfect. Like, never. And I guarantee we will never have a patch or we will never have a game where everyone is like, yeah, like, this game is perfect. Like, you guys can see even with Strive now, right? The first week of Strive, everyone was like, yo, this is it. It's the second coming. This game's going to change the FGC. It's perfect. It's so balanced. You can use any character, And now we're, like, in whatever it is, like, week 4. Yeah. And everyone's like, yo, they dumbed it down. Yo, Soul. All I'm playing is Souls, and he's broke. And what is this? And why they change the mechanics? And this doesn't feel like Guilty Gear. We should just play Zerd, So it just goes to show that not only are our games controversial, but most fighting games now are polarizing in some way. And hopefully we can learn to play through it and have good experiences through it. And find the things that we can pick out to enjoy and not just to criticize.
Yeah, and I feel like I've only been in this position with NRS games since MK9, because with Injustice 1, MKX, Injustice 2, I've been more on the seesaw of not liking them as much as liking them. But with MK9, and you guys know this if you guys were there during the prime of the game, 2011, 2012, on the boards, or just what people were saying about the game on Twitter, to talk highly of MK9 back then was kind of seen as like, what are you doing, bro? The game is so imbalanced.
Dude.
You're a Cabal player. Why should we listen to you? You're so so back then during MK9, you kind of had to like tiptoe around the huge group of people with pitchforks and stuff saying MK9 is bad. Street Fighter 4 is so much better. Execution, this and that, which is fine. They can do that. But I don't like how I'm kind of reliving that experience now. How, you can't talk about what you enjoy about flawless blocking without getting instantly attacked, called this and that, you're a scrub, want to flawless block on hit, bitch, you're not, like, all this stuff. It's like, dude, why are some of us reliving the MK9 experience where we talk about the current game out and we're instantly being attacked and said the game is ass, play this game instead, Tekken way better. Like, okay, that's cool, you like your games, why don't you play your games then, Like, to each their own. But yeah, I don't like that. Like I said, it feels like I'm kind of reliving that MK9 experience when the game was out, and it was very hard to talk about stuff because either people would throw down your, punch down your throat that you're a Cabal player, so your opinion doesn't count, your bias, or that you don't play Street Fighter 4 and Tekken, you don't know what a real game looks like, and I'm just not cool with that. That's why hopefully next NRS game the community gets even bigger, and there'll be less people to constantly throw in our face that we need to play Street Fighter, Tekken, these other games to be considered fighting in players. That's one mentality I really don't like.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of like the bullied child of the FGC, right?
Redhead.
And it makes sense. It makes sense. MK9, it was the first MK game being in the big tournament scene stage. All these tournaments that MK's never really been at before, like CEO, Evo, all this stuff, MLGs. So it was up there with the other big games, and people would look at us and be like, what is that doing over here? Who invited Mortal Kombat? Right. Is that a joke? And slowly we had to build up this reputation that, hey, Mortal Kombat games take skill too. There's people that can get good at them, There's people that can put effort and become the best at them and be consistent and beat other people, and that's what we call skill and talent. Our games have that too. It's similar to other fighting games. Our games aren't just these garbage games that aren't worth ever playing or don't have any skill attached to them. And this is, like I said, hopefully next NRS game, because every game our scene grows. We lose a lot of people from game to game because the game's very different, but we usually retain some of them. And that's why in a lot of games, you see people talk about, well, how did the last games play? Because it's a whole new crowd of faces. All the people that'll be playing the next NRS game, whether it's Injustice 3 or MK11, a big portion of them are going to be new to the community and scene, and they're going to ask, well, how did the last games play? You know, because they weren't around since then. So we should use that to our advantage to really, you know, retain as much players as possible and teach them about each game if we want to, and just grow the scene overall. There's no reason to say every game is bad because XYZ shouldn't play them. Because in a way, we're just advertising for Street Fighter and Tekken if you think about it, you know? We're just having people go and play those games instead, which is kind of weird because that's like the opposite way to build a whole community.
I'm hoping that there's a shift in mentality as more people get exposed to these games, that there's just an overall positivity, because a lot of it is we see a lot of negativity. We see it all the time on YouTube comments, Twitter, people complaining. The big thing right now, and what Krim spoke on, Strive, very first week, everybody fucking loved it. 4 weeks later, you cannot, even myself, I've even fallen into this trap of complaining about Ram Lethal Valentine. I hate that character so much with a passion. But it's literally the same. Everyone just goes right to looking at, well, they're losing. Why are they losing? They don't look at themselves. They look at what they're fighting against. And they happen to fight against Souls, Ram Lethals, and Maze, for example. And they just complain about it over and over again without really trying to figure out what to actually do. It's a curse. It's like someone like cursed the FGC, or just cursed like new players, where new players cannot handle the fact that they're losing. Like, just newsflash, people, you are not God's gift to Earth. You are not born with skill in fighting games. You have to come up. You have to get good. Okay, if you're losing to a character, figure out why you're losing to it. Stop complaining about the character. Get good. If you guys wanted drama, you guys wanted real talk. Here it is. It has not gone anywhere.
Yeah, to touch on like the remedy to all this, really, if you think about it, the key ingredient a lot of people are missing is you need experience. Experience is the thing that will get you better at things. Like for me, example, when I was first getting into fighting games competitively, through playing the 3D MKs, MK9, back then, I thought I was a fighting game player because I really liked Mortal Kombat. But when trying out these other games, through people telling me, yo, bro, try Street Fighter, try Tekken, they're better, you'll love it more than MK. You'll love it so much more. I tried them, and after a month or two, I was done. Like, I couldn't, like, DBZ Fighters, I bought the game, tried it day one, didn't like it, never touched it again. The thing, what I'm trying to explain is that you need experience. Like, I know myself now, I'm not a fighting game player. I'm just someone that really likes Mortal Kombat, that's why I play it. I have no interest in fighting games at all. And it took me so long to finally realize that the reason I like Mortal Kombat and I'm willing to learn it and understand it as a fighting game is because of my interest into the game. If I was never into the story, the characters, the whole presentation, everything, I would never be into it, period. It doesn't matter that it being a fighting game does not carry me whatsoever into being into Mortal Kombat. I just play it for what it is. So maybe a lot of people are like that. Maybe there's some people out there that feel that. Like, maybe you really like Street Fighter, but then you have friends that tell you, yo, play these games. You like Street Fighter because it's a fighting game. Try Tekken, but then you come to realize that, wait a minute, I just like Street Fighter because I enjoy Street Fighter. I'm not necessarily a fighting game player. That's how I look at it. And like Zyfox mentioned, it's also a mentality. At the end of the day, you have to help yourself. You cannot wait for a character to get nerfed or for something that may not ever happen to help you do something. You have to help yourself at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what game it is, what character you're playing against. You have to look at fighting games as like chess. Every character is a piece. You choose what character you play, which is your choice. Again, to refer to myself again, I don't have a playstyle. I don't consider myself a zoner, rushdown player, anything. I like to play what my character provides me. If my character is a rushdown player, then I'll try and find a way to maximize what they're good at and apply that into a match. If my character is a zoning character, then I'll find a way to make my zoning character work. And it's all about finding a strategy that works, gets you the wins, gets you to defeat your opponent, adapting to them. There's so much to fighting games that aren't covered. Like, it's multi-layered. It's like a pyramid, but endless almost, because then you have to factor in skill and how your opponent plays. What if they're doing this and that? You know how to play the matchup this way from how your friend's been playing it, but now you just fought somebody that uses the same character as your friend, but he's playing the matchup completely different. Now opens your minds. It's all these doors that are constantly opening and closing. There's no one way, just look at this guide or this tutorial. This is how you play this character. That's it. Fighting games are not like that. They're very complex. That's why whenever people ask me a question like, Rio, do you like this game or do you not like this game? Yes or no? It's a very stupid question because it requires a very complex answer. There's no yes or no reason why I like a fighting game. When I ask myself, I like a fighting game because of combos. No, because it depends on the fighting game. I played fighting games that have the biggest combos you'll ever see. I didn't care about them not one bit. It's also not about neutral. I played fighting games that are all about neutral. Didn't like them one bit. It all depends. Every game has their own charm. It's like this own entity that has all these different chambers and things that you learn, take from, adapt to, and it's a very complex thing to understand because it's just a mass of all these different ingredients that combine together that make you enjoy a game. It's not one element out of all of them that draws you to the game. That's how I always looked at video games. When I like something, it's not always because of one thing, not because the game is fast, because of combos. It's a collection of all these different variables that are very hard to pinpoint, all combined at the right degree, at the right amount, that combine together that make this game that you just really like. That's what it's about at the end of the day. And it's kind of saddening how like you can't really go anywhere to learn about this or stuff. Like when I was first getting into fighting games, like I said, I got into this whole dilemma. I was like, why do I only want to play Mortal Kombat? Like I'm trying all these games. The only other fighting game I've ever really liked that I want to get into was Smash Melee. But it wasn't because it was a fighting game. It was just all of these ingredients and variables about it that drew me into it and really made me want to get into it and like it. And that's when I realized, like, wow, I'm not a fighting game player. I'm just someone that it depends on the video game, man, for me to really get into it. Like we all have our different ticks, things that draw us in. But yeah, that's what it's always been to me. Like you have to find what you enjoy, and sometimes it's really hard because what you need is experience. You need a lot of experience.
Yep. And a lot of the time, people, they end up taking things way too personal. When someone doesn't like or share your opinion, that is not an attack on you or your character or what you believe in. I feel like way too many people get into that mindset of, well, they ask you, what do you like about this game? Or do you like this game in general? Just to see if you're like them. Like, stop doing that. Don't worry about that. Focus on yourself, focus on your skills and getting better. Because yeah, you can be curious as to why someone likes a game or whatever, but nine times out of 10, there's a negative connotation behind that. And I just hope that the FGC levels up in that aspect and people in general, because I think that's like a human problem.
Yeah, it will naturally. Sorry, Crimson, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, and it's okay to not like a game. You know, that's something that doesn't often get talked about. You know, because people kind of feel like they have to prove that objectively it's a bad game, so that they can say it's okay that they don't like it. You know, like I don't like this game because it's the worst, or this is wrong, or that's wrong. But the truth is, you can just not like a game, and it's all right. You know, or you can disagree with the decision the developer made. You can not like a specific patch. You can not like a meta. All of that's cool. And so the thing is, people should be able to just let themselves not like things without having to feel like they're at war against the people who do like them. And I think that is where, if we grow up a little bit in that area, it'll be nicer for everyone. Because, you know, hey, I think we've probably all had games in certain franchises that we don't like. Even some of the most storied franchises in fighting games, there were certain iterations of them that were controversial, right? Like, people forget when Street Fighter 4 first came out, it was pretty controversial. There were a lot of Third Strike players who were not about it. And they were like, what is this? Like, it doesn't play like the last game. Like, there are all these comeback mechanics and stuff like this, you know? And there are a lot of people who just didn't play. So I think when we go from game to game, we're always going to go through those kinds of transitions where maybe the new game, if they change the mechanics, it's going to be something you don't like. And so I just wanted to reiterate that, hey, you know, it's perfectly fine to not like it, but hopefully we can learn to just let everyone do what they like and let everyone breathe. And I think that'll make the community a better place for all of us together.
Yeah. I don't like Tekken. There's something about Tekken. It's a great fighting game. I love watching the game. I just don't like playing it. Don't like trying to play. It's not that I can't get it. You know, I just don't like it. And that's Tekken is probably the best 3D fighting game franchise out there for sure. You know, I don't like Street Fighter. It doesn't mean Street Fighter is a bad game. It just happens to be like I love Strive. I didn't like Xrd. I tried Xrd. I tried Revelator. Didn't like those games. I love Strive. People like what they like, and stop attacking people for their opinions. Because at the end of the day, It's just like assholes. Everybody got them, all right? Relax.
Yeah, and one of these days, NRS is going to make a game that you probably enjoy. And when you get put into a position that, wow, you can't really say or talk about things without getting attacked or labeled as something, it's not fun to be a part of, you know. It makes you just not want to post or make content or stuff because it's at the end of the day, why do something that's going to get you attacked, you know? Like, what's the point of investing energy into that? But this is why I'm kind of excited going forward for, you know, the future podcast episodes and the next NRS game, because now that we can start focusing on all different kinds of discussion and all different kinds of spectrums, we're really going to get to dive deep into a lot of these games and really talk about things that usually don't hear people talk about, like the stuff I mentioned earlier. But yeah, like Zyfox, I get your point about Tekken, because I also tried to get really heavily into Tekken 7 a couple years ago when Negan came out. And after like a month and a half of playing Negan, after learning all of his combos, all of his B&Bs, all of his converts, counter hits, all of his strings, this and that, I instantly got bored. I just felt like, okay, I got Negan down. Like, I'm not a high-level player. I'm not going to beat near anybody. But I understand how to do all his combos without thinking about it. I understand how to do all of his wall conversions, converts, counter hits, this and that. I know, have all his moves memorized in my head. And then I was like, now what? Like, I don't really vibe with the game. I'm not into it. I don't have the drive to, you know, want to become the best in this game. Or I don't look forward to playing it every single week for the next, you know, years of my life. So I just stopped playing it. But for the time I played it, I had fun just learning the character. So to each their own, like I said. You just have to find a fighting game that you click with. And you find a fighting game that you really like that, let's say, isn't popular or there's not many people playing it, then it's your job to kind of find people to play it with. Like, you have to find a Discord, join a Facebook group. There has to be other people in the world that play the game you like, whether it's MK1 or MK9, anything. Like, there has to be other people with the same mentality as you that want to play the game and like it. And when you start connecting with those people and building a little community, it starts growing, and then you have, you know, games become what they are. You don't necessarily need patches to make a game fun or interesting. If you look at games like Melee or Third Strike, games that haven't been patched in like 2 decades, there's a strong community behind it that keeps growing because people just like playing the game. They look for other people that enjoy playing the game, and they build their community slowly, year by year. I'm sure MK could do that with any game too. It could be MK4. You just have to have people that need the drive to want to go play it. I see a lot of people talk about, I wish I could play this game, this and that, but you can. There are ways to play it. You just have to put in the effort, get into it, and look for people to find it, because you will find people out there that play those games.
And plus, I think we're all here because these games are weird. You know, like these games are quirky, and they always have been ever since the very first one, right? Even MK1 was not. I mean, at that time, it was less established what a traditional fighting game was, but it could not be more different from Street Fighter, right? Those games are like polar opposites of each other, you know? And this has been the MO of the franchise, that there have been like 15 of these games. They always try new stuff. They always do crazy things. They don't like to repeat themselves, which means that, you know, these games are quirky. You know, they're different. It's not like, you know, it's never been like the FGC cool kid, you know, but there's always something that's a little bit strange about all these games. And so that's something that, as an MK fan, you know, that you have to put up with. But it's also what makes the series so crazy, because you get the next game and you're like, whoa, like, we don't know how this is going to play. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the mechanics are going to be. And you kind of get that fun of discovery of like almost starting over from scratch and building something new instead of just continuing to build on whatever you're doing for the last 6 or 7 years. So hopefully, again, it's still cool to make suggestions. It's cool for people not to like things. It's cool, whatever. But hopefully we can remember that is the spirit of what this franchise has been about. That's why it's weird. That's why we're oddballs. But that is also part of what should make this community a fun place to be.
Yeah, well said. Zafox, would you like to close anything out?
No, I've said everything I gotta say. Can't wait for us to officially start the next evolution of this podcast. You know, and get the ball rolling. You know, get our new co-host in here. Get guests rolling around, and everything that we could have done in the last couple years in terms of this podcast, we could finally get to do some of the things because I'm not going to point any elbows. Certain people didn't want certain things to be included for God knows why, but now we'll get to see if people were really wondering, if they had in the back of their mind, I wonder what a podcast would look like without M2 Dave and without Tom Brady in it. You're gonna get that, and now you're gonna see that, and vice versa. Are you gonna see now? You're gonna see a podcast without Shill Rio and Shill Zyfox and Shill fucking Crimson Shadow, and that's exactly what you're gonna get. And be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I think people are gonna be pretty excited for the next co-host. I think a lot of people are gonna love who we're gonna have joining our cast.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. All right, everyone, that's it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening. We will see you all again in the next episode. Thanks again for watching.